Insights into Entertainment, a podcast series taking a deeper look into entertainment and media. Our husband and wife team of pop culture fanatics are exploring all things from music and movies to television and fandom. We'll look at the interesting and obscure entertainment news of the week. We'll talk about theme park and pop culture news. We'll give you the latest and greatest on pop culture conventions. We'll give you a deep dive into Disney, Star Wars, and much more. Check out our video episodes at youtube.com/insightsintothings. Our audio episodes at podcast.insightsintoentertainment.com, or check us out on the web at insightsintothings.com. Insightful podcasts by informative hosts. Insights into Things, a podcast network. Welcome to Insights into Teens, a podcast series exploring the issues and challenges of today's youth. Your hosts are Joseph and Madison Whalen, a father and daughter team making their way through the challenges of the teenage years.
Welcome to Insights into Teens. This is episode 124. Teens and Entitlement. I'm your host, Joseph Whalen, and my grateful and cheerful co-host, Madison Whalen.
Hi, everyone.
How you doing today, Maddie? Be honest. Okay, that's what this show's for.
Not so well.
Not so well, huh? Anything? Address here? No.
Probably just burnt out from band and school and stuff.
Tough first full week at school?
Yeah, we might talk about it later on the podcast, maybe next week, not sure.
Sounds like we got a good podcast coming up then.
Really?
But this start talking about entitlement. This was one that you had done the research for. We'll talk about what the mentality of entitlement and its clinical definition are. We'll explain how entitlement affects relationships, and then we'll take a look at signs of an entitled teenager and methods to fix entitled behavior before we wrap up with 3 tools for battling entitlement. Before we do that, though, I do want to invite our listening and viewing audience to subscribe to the podcast. We did resolve the issues we had with our video hosting, so all of our video podcasts are now up and running. Podbean, big thanks to them for that. They made it very easy to migrate over. So if you do want video versions of our podcast, you can find us listed as Insights into Things. Audio versions of this podcast can be listed and found as the Teens, and they are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Amazon, and pretty much any place you can get a podcast these days. I would also like writing your feedback. We're always looking for show suggestions. You can email comments and things.com. You can hit us on Twitter at insights_things or on Facebook at facebook.com/insights into things podcast, or on Instagram at instagram.com/insights into things, or links to all those on our website at insightsintothings.com. Are you ready?
Sure.
All right. So what is the mentality of entitlement? So the research for this comes from WebMD.com, and it was conducted by you, Madison. They say that entitlement mentality is defined as a sense of deservingness or being owed a favor when little or nothing has been done to deserve special treatment. It can be known as the, quote, "you owe me" Clinically speaking, entitlement is a narcissistic personality trait. People with narcissistic personality disorder have an inflated idea of themselves and a need for lots of attention from other people. It's not how this mentality develops, but a sense of entitlement may be due to social factors, including the environment you grew up in, the way your parents treated you, whether adults solved your problems for you or not, or how you're treated. Authority figure.
So, now I want to kind of mention how entitlement mentality can affect your relationships. People with with an entitlement mentality often see themselves as superior to others. As a result, this way of thinking affects interpersonal relationships. There can be long-term relationship damage as a result of entitlement mentality. When you believe you're entitled to better treatment than others, or that the rules don't apply to you, more likely to suffer in the long term. Given that you simply believe you aren't getting what you're owed, an entitlement mentality can result in conflict in relationships, unhappiness, disappointment, and depression. Your career may suffer too. Entitled people often interview well and can land leadership roles because of their confidence. However, they often lack team spirit and avoid problem solving workplace. Most of the decisions an entitled person makes are self-serving. This can quickly become apparent to their coworkers.
There's also the cycle of entitlement that we should talk about. So feeling entitled to something and the disappointment when you don't get what you want can reinforce entitled behavior. This typically follows a vicious three-step cycle. When you're entitled, you're always vulnerable to the threat of expectations. When your expectations are unmet, it can lead to dissatisfaction and other emotions like anger and a sense of being cheated. When you're distressed, you try to fix the situation and console yourself. Results in self-assurance that you deserve everything you've ever wanted, which reinforces the same entitled behavior. So it's kind of a cycle that feeds itself when you get into that rut there.
Yep.
So let me start off by do you think you suffer from an entitlement mentality?
I mean, I don't really think I do. I never really feel like I'm ever always owed something. I know that, like, for the most part, I never feel like I'm owed anything, even do something for someone else. I guess only if the expectation I have of that person is to have them kind of owe me in a way. Then that's really the only time I think of that, but most of the time I feel like I mostly owe people for the most part, like,
Right.
even if it's really not big of a deal.
And I would tend to agree for the most part. And pat myself and mommy on the back, but I think a lot of that comes with the fact that even though I don't want you to want for anything, what mommy and I have done was we've tried, since the time that you were a baby, to teach you that in order to get the things that you want, they have to be earned. Either they're earned by good behavior, they're earned by obeying the rules, they're doing your whatever it is. And through the years, you've willingly accepted that. And when things are given to you, you're very appreciative because you yourself have had the opportunity to work and earn money, and you understand what the value of that effort actually is. Do you think that has helped you to not have an entitlement attitude?
Obviously. I think a lot of people who are entitled don't understand the of hard work. When you think about kids who constantly want everything and their parents just willingly go along with it, they don't know they don't really take value in how on how they would get what they wanted. It's just that they got it, and that's all they really care about. They don't care, like, how much money parents, how much time it took them to get this, like, how much effort that went into giving them this, something that they demanded, and they just, all they care about is that they got it, and sometimes just throw it away or just completely trash their parents because it was like a different model or something.
Right. You know, and it's funny, and in my experience, I find that the people tend to be those who are the most entitled are the ones that haven't had to work to get to where they are. A couple of people that I've worked for in the past come to mind where their parents were very, very industrious. They are the ones that started out with nothing, worked their way to the top, became very successful at what they did, and then their children benefited from that, but there was never a need for their children to actually. Excuse me. There was never a need for the children to actually put that effort in themselves. They've always been entitled in my experience. Do you know anybody anyone who's entitled that you're aware of?
I can't say that any specific person comes to mind. I've tried to probably avoid those kinds of people, especially because you never really want to be around someone who's completely entitled and only thinks of themselves, and else.
Right.
The only example I can really think of is might be controversial in a way.
Okay.
And that's people don't wear masks.
That's a fair point.
Some of those people might be considered to be entitled in a way.
I could certainly see where you're going with that, and that kind of makes sense. A lot of time entitlement can also be about largely not appreciating what you have. Like those people, let's talk about the mask wearers. The mask wearers are people who understand that there are sacrifices that you have to make for the greater good. When I wear a mask, I don't wear a mask just to protect myself. I wear a mask to protect all those around me too, to protect my family, to protect my coworkers. And those who don't wear a mask most of the ones, at least that I've encountered, tend to look at it as, well, I don't need to wear a mask. I'm going to get it no matter what, and I'll just have a natural immunity. And I think that's kind of an entitled opinion because, yeah, okay, you may be young, you may be healthy, in good shape and not have any underlying conditions, but you're not the only one at risk. You could very well get a mild case of it, but become a carrier and then spread that to others. And this entitlement mentality is all about me. What can I do for me? What's important to me? What's valuable to me? And people that are the anti-maskers are all about themselves. They'll throw out different, freedoms and stuff like that, but really it's about them. And wearing a mask is really about protecting others. And so I agree with you. I think you're probably on par with that. So you've never had a situation where you've had to deal with an entitled mentality or anything like that?
No, thank goodness.
Well, I had this one boss a few years back, and saying, and we said, his father put him on third as a baseball reference. His father put him on third, and he convinced himself that he hit a triple. And he just assumed because he rode his father's coattails to financial success, that he himself was financially successful. And intelligent. And when his father kind of got done dealing with all that nonsense and let him go run off on his own and run his own company, he did a and proved that he couldn't manage his way out of a wet paper bag. And he still thought that he was entitled, even after all that. And once his father cut him off, he kind of had to fend for himself. And I think he started to get an appreciation at that point in time for how tough business was and how tough it was to make it on your own. So even people that are uber entitled, and we're talking somebody who, millions of dollars, in his bank account, in one instance, owned a company, owned a multi-million-dollar home, owned a yacht, owned all this different stuff, went from that to basically nothing, and he's, owing money to the IRS and stuff like that. Even people that are that entitled can come around and start to get an appreciation and work that entitlement. So let's take a little break, and we're going to come back and look at what some of the signs are. Teenagers that are entitled, and we'll start looking at how we can deal with this entitlement mentality. We'll be right back. For over 7 years, The Second Sith Empire has been the premier community guild in the online game Star Wars: The Old Republic. With hundreds of friendly and helpful active members, a weekly schedule of nightly events, annual guild meet and greets, and an active community. On the web and on Discord. The Second Sith Empire is more than your typical gaming group. We're family. Join us on the Starforge server for nightly such as operations, flashpoints, world boss hunts, Star Wars trivia, guild lottery, and much more. Visit us on the web today at www.thesecondsithempire.com.
Welcome back to Infinity. Today we're talking about teens and entitlement. And now we're going to be talking about what are the signs of an entitled teenager. And this research comes from finallyfamilyhomes.org. And it says an entitled teenager is confused about what's deserved, what's earned, and what's a gift. They're unwilling to help others or accept personal responsibility for themselves. Entitled teens have high demands for everyone but themselves. Entitlement is a feeling your child may have, but it's very unlikely for them to express it directly. Therefore, it's up to you to determine if your teen has a sense of entitlement. Here are 5 signs that may indicate you have an entitled child. The first sign is they can't handle being told no. They melt down, pout, or put up a battle every time you turn down a request. An immediate yes is the only way to avoid a battle.
They show signs of sincere gratitude. Again, something that we don't have with you, fortunately. Why should they be grateful for what they believe they're owed? You're lucky to usually hear a thanks from them when you give them something. An ungrateful teen is a sign of an entitled teen.
They may also have a long list of never-ending demands. If you don't expect to walk through a store without being barraged with demands, for nearly everything you walk by, you probably have an entitled teenager.
They also have a no-can-do attitude. Make their own sandwich or lunch for themselves. Pick up laundry or trash on their floor. That's too much to ask for them.
Another behavior can be that they're constantly comparing. It always seems not for them. They're not afraid to ask for the best and the first.
If 3 or more of these sound like your child, you're probably dealing with an entitled teenager. Being entitled not serve them or you well, so it's important to help your child grow out of this attitude.
So now we can look at how to fix entitled behavior. The first step towards successfully fighting entitlement is looking into what may drive behavior. Usually there is some misinformation or false beliefs driving their feelings that are feeding the entitled attitudes and behaviors. In addition, the teenagers are developmentally inclined to be more wrapped up in themselves.
As far as false beliefs go, it could be that they have bought into the message that their value is based on what they own or how they look. If your sense of personal wealth or your personal is on the line, non-essentials can start to look very essential. Those $100 jeans aren't just expensive. Getting them becomes tied to how loved and lovable you believe you are.
Feeling equipped or unable to get what you want or need can drive entitled behavior. If you think that the only way you can get those jeans is to demand them, that's what you do.
Developmentally, the science shows that teenage brains begin to revolve more intensely around self as they begin preparing for independence. Consequently, teens need extra help during this to think about others and to empathize. Chances are that they're not thinking about how much work or money someone else spent to give them something, which is something that we had already addressed in the previous segment there. So let me ask you, do you tie your self-worth to any kind of personal or materialistic possessions?
Not really. I normally try tying my self-worth more or less to my good-hearted nature or my intelligence or some of my hobbies and stuff like that. More or less the things I feel that I really make up I am rather than material possessions.
And I think you're absolutely right. You do. You make it more about who you are and what you can offer to other people than about what you have and what people can offer to you. So let's go down the 5 signs real quick and just see if you exhibit any of these, just as a interesting mental exercise. So the told no, they can't handle being told no. Is that something that bothers you? Is that something that you have difficulty accepting?
Not really, for the most part. Yeah, I can kind of feel a bit upset if, like, I'm being told no, but it's not like I'll, like, out screaming at you guys. I'll be like, oh, alright. And then I'll kind of just walk away from it.
Right. How about sincere gratitude? Are you actually grateful when people do something for you or give you something like for instance, Gma is a great example of this. Gma made the big blanket for you, and she spent hours and hours putting this thing together and pattern and all that stuff. How did that make you feel?
Honestly, I loved it. I love the fact that she put so much time into it. And honestly, it makes it so much better when I sleep with it because I know that it was made with care. Honestly, I really love the design of it as well.
Yeah, it's almost like when you sleep with it that, Gma's giving you a hug every time you curl up with it,
Yeah.
So a long list of never-ending demands. How demanding do you think you are?
Not really.
You're not at all.
Yeah. Like, few times I actually like would want something. It takes me a while to like come up, and like I'm normally like very quiet about it. Like, hey, Daddy. So I was thinking about something.
Right. And like when you want to get a new add-on for The Sims, one of your passions, and you're paying for it, which is the ultimate irony here. You're paying for it yourself with your own money that you earn. I just have to buy it for you because you don't have purchase right. You come to me and you're all shy. And my response is, what's the ask? What do you want? Just tell me what you want. And you're like, oh, well, I want to buy this. All right, here, it's done. Have fun. Not demanding at all.
Yeah.
You don't demand, to go shopping. You don't demand clothes. You don't demand any of the things that, when you were born and I knew I was having a daughter, I terrified because I didn't know if I'd be able to relate to a daughter. And I heard all horror stories from my friends who had girls about, oh, when they get to this age, they're going to always want to go shopping. And they're this one, that. And I got none of that from you. And it was almost like, were they just trying to scare me, or are you just that different? And it's like, yeah, she's pretty easy to get along with at this point. So you've never had that problem. How about a no can do attitude? If we ask you to do something, do you resist that? Do you say no, not my job, don't bother me, anything like that?
Not really. Um, I'm in a bad mood, which never normally am unless, it's an actual physical thing or something happened. So I definitely know I normally always do what you guys ask me. Unless I get.
Yes, and given the fact that you're my daughter and I ask you to do something and you don't do it, I totally understand why you don't do it, because you are my.
I forget.
What about comparing? Do you compare a lot?
I normally like to try not to. I've never really been all that much into social media and stuff. And I never like compare like, oh, these kids get this and I have to have this. Like, the only time I've ever done that is like with school lunch. But like am I really going to complain about something that petty?
That's a very good point. And no, I think for the most part, both Bobby and I would agree that you really are not the type of person to compare yourself to someone else. Growing up, friend that was like that. And I've said many times on this podcast that growing up, my parents did not have a lot of money. We struggled to put food on the table and a roof over our heads. So I never really got toys. I never got gifts that were not associated with a birthday party, my birthday or Christmas. So it was kind of a very bare bones type of thing. But it's because when I would get something for my birthday, it was huge to me. I was incredibly grateful for it because I knew how difficult it was for my parents to provide. And I had this one friend of mine. Every time I get something decent that he liked for my birthday, he'd be this entitled kid. He'd go out, he'd bug his parents and make his parents go out and buy it for him. And he would either same thing or he would get one better than me just so that he had something better. And I never really understood what that drive was. And I think it was because from the position that I was in, it was never an option for me. Like, that I got what I got in the first place was a huge thing for me. the fact that I want something better than somebody else just never really, it never computed with me. Like I never really understood it. And I still don't, even doing. But I've run into that type of thing in the past where he would compare himself to me, which I thought was hilarious because we were paupers compared to him and his parents. And I'm like, why would you compare yourself to me? Like, I don't, the funny thing was, like, with the exception of my dad, the relationship that I had with my mom was fantastic. And his parents almost bought him stuff. They didn't have to deal with him. And I think he was almost jealous of how close I was to my mom because he never had that with either of his parents. I don't know. It's speculation, 30, 40 years ago speculation.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's what we have for our suggestions on how to fix it. But we're going to give you 3 tools. We're going to take another quick break. We're going to come back and we're going to give you 3 tools to help battle entitlement. We'll be right back.
Insights into Entertainment, a podcast series taking a deeper look into entertainment and our husband and wife team of pop culture fanatics are exploring all things from music and movies to television and fandom. We'll look at the interesting and obscure entertainment news of the week. We'll talk about theme park and pop culture news. We'll give you the latest and greatest on pop culture conventions. We'll give you a deep dive into Disney, Star Wars, and much more. Check out our video episodes at youtube.com/insightsintothings. Our audio episodes at podcast.insightsintoentertainment.com. Or check us out on the web at insightsintothings.com.
Welcome back Insights into Teens. Today we're talking teens and entitlement. And now we're going to be talking about 3 tools for battling entitlement. It seems like entitlement is all around, especially among teenagers. You can't be complacent if you want your teen to break free from entitlement. It requires effort and intention. So the first tip we have here is teach your teen gratitude. The enemy of entitlement is gratitude. Gratitude isn't just being thankful or appreciative, but also recognizing the effort of the giver. Explicitly teaching yourself teen how to be grateful will help them develop gratitude more quickly and fully. Identify a gift when it comes. This means being able to tell the difference between what's owed, what's earned, and as an act of kindness. If you didn't earn it and no one owes you, it's a gift. Appreciate what you have. This means considering the worth and value of what is given. Recognize the kindness of the giver. Someone had to work and pay and be thoughtful of the recipient when given the gift.
See, the other interesting thing about teaching your teen gratitude is not only does it help them to get out of this entitlement attitude, but it also makes the things that they get worth more to them. Like if you didn't have gratitude for the gifts that you got, the blanket that G-Mom made for you would just be another article of linen that was in the house. It would have no intrinsic meaning to you. It wouldn't have any sentimental value. It would just be a blanket like any other blanket. But because of the gratitude that you have and the appreciation that you have, it makes that all more valuable to you. So the individual who has gratitude for what they receive increases the benefit of the things that they receive as well, which is another interesting take. The next thing that we have, and we've already kind of touched on it, and that is the fight comparison. They say that they talk specifically about social media. So they say set time limits. Social media altogether. Help your teens interpret what they're seeing in the media and online. Remind them that all things are meant to sell. Even their friend on social media says something, such as, "I've got it all together," or "You should admire me." These are all half stories at best, but most are outright lies. Never compare your teen to others yourself. Conversely, do remind your teen that their value is in who they are and not in what they have or how they compare to someone else. And again, this is another one that has multiple benefits to it. If you're valuable as you feel yourself, then it doesn't matter what personal possessions you have.
Yeah.
And personal possessions come and go. You know, if this week because you have the expensive designer jeans, well, what happens next year when those jeans are out of style and they're sitting in a drawer somewhere? Do you not feel worthy anymore because you're not wearing those? Like that, tying your self-worth to that type of thing is kind of silly.
Yeah, and it's pretty much a downward spiral from there.
Right. And it becomes almost impossible to feed that appetite for belonging and self-worth when you're attaching it to a materialistic type of thing. If you make yourself a better person, if you're compassionate, if you're empathetic, if you help people, like that's one of the reasons why I enjoy the kind of work that I do. You know, I work in IT. My job is to help other people. It's to solve problems, whether it's a problem somebody's having with their computer or whether it's a problem that the company's having that needs to be solved. The, the to solve problems for other people is self-fulfilling for me. And it allows me to do that outside of work.
Yeah.
You know, I tell a lot of people, I'm very fortunate that my profession happens to also be my hobby. But anybody, you know, first responders, doctors, nurses, police officers, people that are out there protecting people and saving lives. There's no item that you could have in the world that would make you feel more valuable than to do something like that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So when somebody gets themselves to being a better person and making the world a better place, even in a little bit, you know? Like, no, I'm not going to go out there and solve world hunger or create world peace or anything like that. Yeah, you know, I got some perspective on life. I'm not expecting the world. But if I make a person smile today because I crack a joke that makes them laugh, you know, or I see a coworker happens to be troubled or down, and I just give them a shoulder to lean on, or to what their issues are, and I make them feel better, then I made my little part of the world a little bit better today.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that means more in the grand scheme of things than having that designer shoe, that new handbag, or whatever it is that people tend to attach value to. Making people feel better, making the world better, makes you more valuable to the world.
Mm-hmm.
And when you feel more valuable to the world, you feel more valuable to yourself. What's something you do that makes you feel better about yourself. It makes you feel more valuable.
Let's see. I guess the thing that I'd probably say that I feel makes me valuable is kind of this podcast. I'm a real teen experiencing real issues that teens face, and talking about it on the podcast, I know has been helping people. People have really looked at this podcast and have benefited from it. And not only was it to help me get through my own issues and talk it out with you, but it was also in order to help others. And so far, I think that's my most valuable attributes.
I think I would agree. I think we've gotten feedback already. I've chatted with people on some of our rebroadcast feeds, and they told me how valuable this podcast to them. But I'm going to give you another example that's immediate in my mind, and that was yesterday. So yesterday I came home from work, and I was agitated, and I was kind of angry, and worked up, and I was recounting what happened at work yesterday, and you saw how upset I was. And what did you do? Do you know what you did?
Did you in the show?
Yeah, you just came over, and just that simple gesture of, Dad, it's okay. You're home now. It's okay. Immediately had a calming effect. And like, that meant a lot to me. It meant a lot that you cared how I felt, and it meant a lot that you wanted to ease that burden. And you didn't have a good day at school. You kind of were dealing with your own problems, and it was one of those, you know what, I can help here. I can do something. I can relieve that burden, and it did. And when you can have that effect, people with a simple gesture of just coming over and patting somebody on the shoulder and letting them know it's okay. You're home now, everything's all right, don't worry about it. Doing that makes you a better